On this episode, I'm gonna geek out on stats, and you're gonna like it, for real. This real estate stuff is not easy, so send me your questions and I will answer them. This is the Ask Jason Show. Hello everybody, my name is Jason Piercey and this is episode 145 of the Ask Jason Show. We're in a slightly different place. I think for the first time ever. No, we filmed one time at my apartment, didn't we? When I had an apartment a few years ago. Yeah, but anyway, this is the only time we've ever filmed at my actual home. So, in addition to this being new, I'm gonna do something else that I have never done on the Ask Jason Show ever before. Ever done this. Have paper. Because I rarely use pen and paper, ever. Except for 2 times. When I'm sad, depressed, and drinking wine, I'll write, like my feelings, poetry and stuff, I know, right? And the other time is if I'm brainstorming marketing ideas. I like to do that with a pen and paper, and it has to be a certain kind of pen because I like to feel and hear the scratch it makes. I don't know if will you get this? You hear that? I love that sound and how it feels when I'm doing it. So anyway, I have this because I made some notes about what I wanted to talk about today, which I think also is a first. I don't ever make notes. The reason I made these notes, they're just a few numbers. The reason I made them is because there's a lot of conversation happening in the real estate industry in general across Canada and globally. They're in for some trouble down in the States. There's a bunch of stuff happening. And a lot of that pressure is stuff that we are not at all feeling locally. Doesn't exist here. And I wanted to explain why, and then I wanted to give concrete information that backs up the why, because if you don't have the data, I'm just some dude with great hair on the internet that's telling you to buy and sell houses. And you deserve better than that. So that's what we're doing now. So, Real Estate Trading Acts, so the law about how to buy and sell houses, are all legislated provincially. So each province has their own Real Estate Trading Act. There will be similarities and differences across all of them. The industry in general and finance in general and everything that Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, everything that the Bank of Canada does, all of those things, all of those rules and laws are all governed federally. So they take federally relevant, important situations and create federal laws to protect our country from whatever these difficult situations could be. That's done with Canada in mind, which basically means it has about as much effect, which means our market has about as much effect on the result of those laws as we have when we vote in a federal election. Our seats are minimal. It has effectively no change whatsoever on who gets into the House of Parliament. Is it the House of Parliament? What is wrong with me? Yeah, it's Parliament. Anyway, who lives in the big house with JT? It's kind of the same. They don't look at our market when they make these decisions. And when they produce all their data that's clickbaity and makes headlines, and CBC National News talks about an impending real estate crisis, or they talk about how average prices are down by $100,000. Like, that's national stuff, okay? And it really doesn't apply to us locally. So, to give you a very concrete idea of where we stand on our beautiful little island, it ain't even little actually, I mean it takes a whole day to get to the other side, so it's actually really, really big. Then another day to get to the top, probably, if you can even get all the way up there. I don't know. I'm wildly uninformed on provincial geography. I'm just realizing. Anyway, I know the South Coast is at the bottom, unless you turn the map over. So, anyway. So I'm gonna tell you what Canada's national stuff is, on average. And then I'm gonna tell you what ours is locally, so you can see the difference. Because people think that our houses are too expensive. And too expensive only exists if it's compared to something else. And the thing that we've always been comparing it to is how much it used to cost. It's not its value, it's how much we're used to it being versus what it is now. Director Joe's going, amen. Anyway, he's a Southern Baptist, actually. I don't know if I told you guys that, but it's definitely true. He's a staunch atheist, actually. He just crossed himself incorrectly with his left hand. It's like, anyway, he's satanic, probably. So, let's talk about differences between Canadian averages and local averages so that you can get context. The Canadian benchmark purchase price for a house. Now, we say benchmark because average is a terrible way to measure housing prices. Because if two houses sell on a day, one of them was $1 million, one of them was $200,000, the average sale price was $600,000. And it's a terrible representation of both of those. So we use what's called a benchmark price, which means to get a solid, it's more like a median. It's the common one. And it's what you should be thinking about spending if you are the average member of society, sort of. So the average member of society buys the benchmark house. Effectively. I've probably bastardized that a bit, but effectively, okay? So the Canadian benchmark is just over $700,000. So the typical family in Canada, across the country, all other things created equal, as a benchmark, average, not like the statistical definition of average, like mean, but, normal, is $700,000. Here locally, it's just over $300,000. So that's a massive, massive, massive difference. And the recurring costs annually to own that benchmark house across Canada is a little over $50,000. So that's how much it costs you to pay your mortgage, all the other stuff for a year, every year, 50 grand. Here locally, it's like just over 22. And by the way, the poverty line in the province of Newfoundland is like $24,000 a year. So you can own a house. Now, you won't get the approval, like that's not the way stuff works, but it costs less to own a house in a year in our local market than the number we use to define poverty. So put that in, that's a real, put that in context. That's a real thing. The first year of home ownership across Canada, including your down payment, your closing costs, all of your payments throughout the year, all of that stuff, costs you a little over $200,000 to buy a house and own it for the first year. That's how much money is going to come out of your pocket, 200 grand. Here locally, it's just over 85, between 85 and 90,000. These are all massive, massive differences. And I can already hear people saying, yeah, but that's Upper Canada, that's the mainland. They make more money up there, everything's more expensive up there, it all comes out in the wash. Fair. So how do we control for that difference? Because if it's just a ratio thing, like if we get paid $10 and it costs $20 to live here, and they get paid $20 and it costs $40 to live there, yeah, sure, it costs twice as much, but it's irrelevant because the balance is the same. It's the same ratio. So to equalize that, let me give you this bit of information, okay? Like any good science experiment, you have to control for those variables. How do we control for the variable that the cost of living is just higher in certain places, but to get people to live in those certain places where the cost of living is higher, you pay them more money? Well, let's look at Canadian national average household income and provincial average household income. And I'll take my calculator out. If the benchmark price across Canada, it's over 700,000, like 715, 718, something like that. If it's 700,000, and that's conservative, the national average household income all across Canada is 93,000. That is a 7.5 times ratio. So 7.5 years of income, if you had no other expenses, would be the purchase price of a house. So that's the ratio of it's 7.5. In Newfoundland, our benchmark price for a house is 300. Well, it's like 315. So I'll up ours. I'll up ours to 325, which is high. You get a lot of house here for 325 right now. Here's what's it sort of blew my mind. Canadian average household income, $93,000 pre-tax, gross. Canadian average benchmark of a house price, $700,000. Our local benchmark house price, just over $3. We're bumping it to $325,000. This is nuts. Our average household income is $87,000. So our ratio, keep in mind, Canada's was 7.5. Ours is 3.74. 7.5, 3 3/4. So you can see why, from a national perspective, we need to worry about whether or not the housing market is sustainable. And you need to worry whether or not people can afford these interest rates. Because 750% of every year's gross income is what they spend on a purchase price to buy a house. That's crazy. And it costs them 50 grand a year in just recurring costs. And their gross is only 93. It only costs us 3.7, well, even 3 3/4, 3.75% is our ratio. And it only costs us 22 grand a year annually to hold on to those houses. And we gross almost 90K. When you're looking at all of these headlines, throw them in the garbage. They just do not apply to you. In real estate, more than probably just about any other industry that at least I can think of in this particular moment, but I reserve the right to be wrong, is incredibly locally specific. Only local information matters. Because across Canada, just to get the benchmark, not even fancy, just to get the benchmark house, it's 7.5 years worth of your income. Here locally, it's less than 4. It's half. And if you think it's because well, they make more money, they don't. 6 grand a year. 6 grand a year more. And their benchmark is 233% higher. I mean, so it's a little bit of a different episode of Ask Jason, but I see so much in the market now, and all of the stuff that we're doing with the Ask team, and I really wanted to get into one of these and really take out my calculator, and I really wanted to get official with you, because I have the brand of being charismatic or goofy or comedic, and that's true because it's authentic to who I am as a person, but it's all very calculated, because this, right, Joe saying, make a joke about the calculator, because you said calculated. Oh my God, do you see what I'm up against? He's the real character. I'm just a guy with hair. And a lot of scars. I still have a lot of scars. I almost died, don't forget that. Still, pity, okay? Hire me. No. But I really needed to get this one structured in a way that people would understand that we are not subject to the rest of the crap that you see on the national news. We're not. We're just not. We actually live in an incredibly affordable real estate market. So that's it. That's this episode of the Ask Jason Show. Not asking you for nothing, just telling you. Take it as you will. However, I'm very open to your thoughts and your questions and your opinions. And I'm also very open to what other realtors would say. Because I'm wondering how they would articulate this and if they feel the same way about it. Having that said, all this data comes from Canada Mortgage. Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. That's where this data comes from. Holy cow. So it's a trusted resource, right? That's where this information comes from. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ask Jason Show about Canadian mortgages. I love you all. See you next time. I hope you enjoyed me nerding out on stats. It's been a while. The Ask Jason Show exists so that you can get good real estate related information from a resource that you can trust. Now, speaking of resources you can trust, here's a couple I would trust to work with my mom. Because good enough for mom, I mean, good enough for you.